people's fear, I think, stops them from researching. And, sometimes people don't want their paradigm broken. They don't want their preconceived beliefs to go away, where
they became
I like
comfortable
that.
in it.
Right.
That's normal.
I like the idea of changing my beliefs, because what it meant is usually that I'm getting closer to the truth, right? Because if you believe something and you find out it's not true and you do some research on it and then it's shown to you, then it should feel better. So I've always not been afraid of that. One of the things that Jordan has said many times is that knowledge is power, as we've said, and that's why we think that the entire deception that's upon mankind started from this idea of, as long as these people in power have the knowledge and the people below them don't, it allows that structure to exist. As soon as you're on an equal playing field with those who are enslaving you, it doesn't really work anymore.
The power goes away.
Right.
The power goes back to where it should be, which is with each person, rather than a group of people over another group of people.
Right. And I mean, we got the same kind of comments when we mentioned Aleister Crowley. And what I was trying to tell people is I don't see a problem with reading the books that he wrote. I've learned a lot through reading those. And there's some things that I, simply because of my own personal beliefs, will not do. I will not try and conjure up demons. I will not paint a pentagram around me and sit in a dark room and chant the 72 ineffable names of God, all this nonsense.
Yeah.
Not because I think that demons will appear so much, but just that I do think if there was anything that wouldn't be allowed, it should be that. Yeah. But I do like to read people's works who say they did, because at least I'm getting an insight into what they say happens, and I can choose for myself what to believe and what not to believe.
Whether or not they're telling a story that they made up in their heads or it's something they actually experienced, you should be able to, or at least we are, I think we're able to decipher between those things and leave the bad and take the good from things.
Absolutely. That should be everyone's intention, is that once you've got a firm foundation built of what you believe in and what matches your reality, then what you can do is you can take new info and hear it and process it through kind of your own filter, to where if it matches your previous research and it matches what you believe in and it seems to fit reality, then you can add it to your box of truth.
Right. But that all starts with knowing why you believe what you believe and whether or not you came to that conclusion on your own.
Right. Which is,
and from there, then you can start opening up your mind to.
That's the first step. And it was tough for us because, again, we grew up Christian and we were told that anything coming from outside of that doctrine was from the devil. Yeah. That is an extremely handcuffing concept.
Yeah.
Concept. Get it? So
it's a good way to keep people from leaving your
cult.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, if something is true, then it will stand up to scrutiny. It will stand up to questioning. It will stand up to research. And there's some parts of what we were taught that did not.
And they just like to have the explanation, so we don't initially go looking into anything.
Right. And again, I think one of the most important, and we're going to talk to Jordan about this, is my idea of the complete lie of history. Been looking into a lot of what Anatoly Fomenko has written about, and I totally agree. Just because I went looking for old books, Anatoly Fomenko believes that there is not an accurate written document from before the 11th century.
I believe that.
Yeah, which is only 1,000 years ago. That he thinks that everything before that was either a lie, fabricated by basically the Jesuits and the the scribes of the 14th, 15th, 16th century. And I don't disagree, because I went looking for books and things that were written back by Aristotle, were written by Plato, and I tried to see, well, what date did they say it was? Yeah. And you cannot find that information, because all of those books have been rewritten, and when they rewrote them, they wrote the date that they all agreed on. And so you're like, well, then you didn't copy his book.
Yeah.
You changed what he wrote.
And the oldest copies, which would be the oldest actual physical books of these people that we have, are in like the 1700s. And we're talking books written by Aristotle, who was supposedly and allegedly BC.
And then they'll say, well, I'm copying this from a document from 1,300. And then that document will say, I'm copying it from a copy from 800.
Well, show me that document that you copied.
Well, yeah, those are lost in the Great Fire of Alexandria.
How'd they copy them?
They copied them before the fire, and then some of the great knowledge was lost, though.
It's just like really, really, really bad when you start looking into all that stuff.
It is, and this is one of the reasons I believe that wholeheartedly is because if you go to a site, I'll drop this into the chat room right now for those who want to play around with it. It certainly is interesting. This site is a population counter, okay? And basically what it is you can put in the starting year, the ending year, and then the growth rate of the population. Well, right now, the United States is, I believe, around a 1% growth rate. And sometimes it goes below that to the negative, or not negative, I'm sorry, to the, 0.5%. But and it's gone up as high as like 2 or 3. But right now it's a pretty steady 1. And I'd say across the world it's a pretty steady 1. So you can put that in. I think it's preset right now at 0.12%. But let's go ahead and put it in at a 0.5%. Okay, so that's a 0.05. So that's way less than it is. I'm just trying to grow the population slowly at this point. Okay. And for starting year, I'm going to put that the starting year is 1. And let's just start for ending year at 3,000 years. Okay, so we're saying that the Earth is people have only been here for 3,000 years. Okay. Starting population, I'm going to put at 2. And basically what this goes through is and people always say, well, does this take into account people dying? Well, yes, that's what a growth rate percentage is. You're taking the percentage of growth, all things considered. Okay. So when everybody's dead and when everybody's born at the end of a year, how much did you increase your population? So
almost like you're in a business, when you look at how much your profit was for the entire year, it's the net or gross. When it includes it minuses everything. So net is at the very end, everything you got after payments and bills.
Correct. So at 1%, that means if your population of humanity has 100 people, at the end of 1 year, you would have 101.
Okay.
Okay. And then at the end of the next year, then it would go up. It's 1% each time. So as it grows a little bit, but people die. And so it does include everybody who's dead. Okay. So we're starting at the year 1, ending at 3,000, starting a population at 2. And we're going to calculate that out and see that within just 3,000 years, our population would be 6.2 million. Okay. Oh. And you can actually click the button that says show subtotals, which is interesting because when you calculate that, it will show you that basically we had 2 people from the year 2 all the way until the year 83, at which point we then added a person. So it kind of, lays it out for you. You can see exactly how many people there were each year. So at that point, we're looking at 6.2 million. So let's go back now and change that to the ending year of 5,000. Again, remember, we put in a 0.5% growth rate, which is far less than what it currently is.
Right. So we're lowballing.
Lowballing. Okay. So when I put in 5,000 years, the population is 134 billion.
Whoa. Hello.
So what this should bring to mind is that the amount of time that humans have been here, I tend to think that in the past that the growth rate percentage would have been even higher. I tend to think that.
Yeah, there was no birth control. There was, people are just boning like crazy, I'm assuming.
Just popping kids out every year, every 9 months. Yeah. So, it gets pretty crazy because then if we went back and, again, 134 billion is multiple times over what we have now. Yeah. Probably 21 times what we have now. So if we change it instead to a 1% growth rate, which would be 0.01 in the growth rate box there, if you're looking at it at home, and you hit instead, we'll go to 3,000 years again, like we started, and hit calculate. Well, in 3,000 years, the population would be 18 trillion. Wow. So
now this is assuming that the growth rate, is
1%.
That's an average growth rate, right? Which it could change and stuff like that.
Here's the thing to me is I think that the growth rate percentage is not even true. I think it's more than 1%. Basically what they're saying.
Who's to say, how do people actually know? There's people that live in Africa that are born every day in other countries that aren't recorded as living or even people dying.
Well, the way you figure out the growth percentage is to take a city. Let's say there's 1,000 people. How many people does that city have at the end of that year? Okay, so if there's 1,000 people, 1% growth rate says that they would have 1,010 at the end of 1 year. And then at the end of the next year, you would have to add 1% of 1,010 is going to be about 10 again. So it's going to be 1,020. And then at the end of the next year, it would be 1,030. Maybe eventually you're going to get to the point where it's going to go up 1,031. And that's how a growth rate percentage works. To me, I just think that the growth rate is more than that. But even if I take the growth rate as given to me at 1%, and I'll real quick run a search and just see what it says the world's growth rate percentage is. But it tells me that the Earth has not been here. I mean, I'm sorry, not the Earth. The people have not been here as long as we think.
Yeah.
And also, they throw in some craziness like the Black Plague. The Black Plague wiped out. But they're really having us believe that, like, from the year 100 till 1600, humanity was stupid.
Yeah.
They didn't invent anything. They didn't,
until science came along, then we started awakening.
Right. So get this. We were talking recently. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but it's a complete and total farce. Think about how they tell us that perspective drawing didn't come into play until the year 1600 or 1500, whatever they say. And then they show us art older than that, and it's just these crazy figures that they said they couldn't do perspective drawings because it took, I guess, having this enlightenment. That's total bullshit.
Yeah, no, you draw what you see. I mean, that's...
Absolutely. It's a total bullshit thing just to make people think that there was dark ages or there was people that were before that drew like kindergartners. No, people would have looked at the world around them and would have drawn based on what they see. Why would you ever believe that people would not be capable of drawing in perspective? Yeah. Sure, with the geometrical lines and everything.
They couldn't maybe draw perfectly, but they would in general draw what they're seeing.
They wouldn't draw a vanishing point with the lines of the road coming away from it with the building tops aiming down. But they would have drawn as they see things, knowing that people who are further away are drawn smaller.
If they were drawing a nature scene, they would draw a small tree that was far away, and they would draw a tree that was closer to them, a little bigger, because that's what they saw.
Right. But no, people have us believing that they drew the tree that was far away just as big as the person right next to us. That's the art that they show us. And this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
These are fabrications of history. They're not historical.
Because at some point in history, there was a group of people that decided to rewrite our history.
Correct.
And have it start from, well, a certain person's birthday.
Yeah. And anything, but I mean, that's so crazy to think about. We always talk about that they went to zero. Imagine us right now just saying, okay, we're going to change the calendars and let's go back to when George Washington was born, and that is zero.
That's
and anything before. Yeah, we were watching a comedy special the other day, and he's talking about, well, what happened when they changed the time? What if it was the year 4? And you're like, what year is it? And they're like 4. It's like, but I'm 28.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the history they tell us. They do tell us it was changed well after that. But still, can you imagine people would all have a birth date? I was born on July 6th, whatever year they said it was, and then somebody just comes along and says, nope, now you're born on this date. What happened to my birthday?
So if you were 28, you would now became 4 years old.
Right, you'd have to like do some math and figure. No, these things are all fabrications. Yep. They are absolute fabrications put in place by a ruling Vatican who had control over everyone. Imagine, just like we saw in the comedy special, that somebody was able, Christians say they're so oppressed and that they're put down. And ask a Christian.
There's a war on Christianity or whatever.
Yeah, ask a Christian, what date is it?
What's the year?
What's the year? And then realize that everybody in the world goes by the same year, basically, for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah, they go by the same year based on what the church said. And many people, science included, don't believe in that, but they still go by that same date because of the hierarchy of the church and the, what do you want to call it, their ability to dictate what goes on across the world. That they were, all roads lead to Rome. You
ask Neil deGrasse Tyson what year it is, and he'll say 2017. Like, okay, well, so 2017 years ago, who was born?
And they said, we're all going through it together. We're all walking together saying, Jesus is 1, Jesus is 2, Jesus is 3. Very funny, very funny.
Oh my God, I was dying.
It was pretty good. And it just makes you think that is what the church has been able to put on top of people. And when we say that our history has been rewritten, then we start looking back and we say, who is the one that went out and told people that there was this universe and that there was these other planets and these places you could go?
Giordano Bruno.
And it was the religious people. It was Catholics that went out to all these observatories and started these astronomical unions, and it was them. And that's the craziest thing. And again, this is why I think it's important that I went to a Jesuit high school, because I saw it for myself. I saw them sending me to religion, coming out of that class and sending me to biology and learning about evolution.
Right.
And I said, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Why am I being taught both these things? Well, what they do is they want you to be dependent on one or the other. Mm-hmm. Either you're dependent on science, and so you base your entire life off what they say, or you're dependent on religion and base your entire life off what they say.
Yeah.
Both of them create slave societies.
They give you versions on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's disinfo obviously on both ends. So
and they hope that if you get jaded by one, you run to the other.
Yeah. So either way they win. So Absolutely. Then how you get free, you have to find your own way.
You have to be in the middle. And that's what let me go back to the population. Sorry.
Okay, sure.
So the population growth percentage, this is crazy. Have you ever seen this world population clock that just keeps running and running and running and running?
And that's sad. That just makes life just look like numbers.
It does make life look like numbers. I agree.
Like someone's dying every time that number goes down. That's crazy.
The number does not go down. That's the thing.
1, 2, 6. It went 62, 63, 62. 69, 71, 72, 73. It doesn't go.
Oh, it did go down. I did see it go to 75, 74, 75, 75.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I don't see a growth rate percentage here. I must have clicked the wrong link. Okay, it says the rate increase is therefore almost halved since its peak of 2.19%. I mean, if you put in a 2% growth rate percentage, let's go back and just do that for fun real quick.
Just one more percentage up?
It's crazy. So you put in a 2% growth rate. We started at the year 1. Let's say we're just going 2,000 years. Okay, so mind you, we're just going 2,000 years, the date from Jesus' birth to now.
Or around Jesus' birth.
Around Jesus' birth. At 2% growth rate, we're calculating the population. The population would be 31 quadrillion. That's 31, 100, 927, 992, 230, 000.
Holy cow.
So this is why if you can take your own information and you can push it through your mind, your brain, allow it to work, then you will come to your own conclusions that do not match what we're taught. Mm-hmm. And so I have a choice. Either I can say, well, I'm going to believe what I'm finding by doing research and gathering evidence and looking at things, or I can believe what science is telling me, which just does not make sense. It does not match what we see in reality, a population of, 7.4 billion, I think, according to that site. Okay. But the growth rate of 2% is probably really high. Let's put in 1,000 years. Okay, so 1,000 years with a 2% growth rate, our population would be 780,000. So let's put in, try and get it to
smaller than the population of LA.
Yeah. So then we'll put in maybe, let's put in 1,400. Okay, so 1,400 years, and we're calculating that, and we're way above now. We're at 2 trillion. So let's back it down. So what we're doing is actually kind of looking at what year might it be if the growth rate percentage of 2 is true.
At least when humans popped into being, whenever that was.
Right. So this is a million, billion. So 40 billion at 1,200. Probably a little too high. So let's go 1,100. And we get 5 billion. So that's maybe 1111. Wouldn't that be funny? 1111 comes out to 7 billion people.
Whoa.
So if the population growth percent, this is what you need to ask yourself. Okay. What is the growth percent of humanity? What if we have a certain number this year, what will that number be next year? Will it increase? I think that the growth percent rate is increasing, don't you?
Yes.
Meaning there's more people next year than there is this year, and so on and so forth. It never goes backwards.
No. I don't think so.
I don't think so
I
either.
don't think that's, no. Mm-mm.
So, I mean, even a 1% is pretty conservative. But again, 2% means that in 11 years, that you would already have 7 billion people. So then you need to start looking at what they tell us. They tell us humans have been around, what do they say, 100,000 years?
Something
I think
like
I've heard
that.
Like 3 million at some point.
Depending on which Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal you want to consider is more human than the other. But
yeah, so anyway, that's what is interesting. And we just went on that tangent because if you really look at that idea, I think you might come to a different conclusion about how many people there are, or how many people there should be at this year, what year are we actually in. And these are some of the things that we're going to talk to Jordan about because I think it's important. And when I've looked into the history, as I said, of Fomenko, he makes much more sense than the current beliefs that we are given. There's much more about what he's saying that matches my reality. And basically what he's telling is a story of them wanting the 1600s and 1700s to look like a period of enlightenment, that humanity was dumb before that, and because of these foundings of science, that the world was then propelled into, just look at what's happened in the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. That means that within the last 100 years, airplanes, cellular phones, wireless technology, all these things have just been in the last 100 years. So you're supposed to believe that the 5,000 years before that, people walked around in trench coats or big blankets and didn't discover the wheel. It's just, it's a crazy belief to think that. Mm-hmm. He describes it as, he says Jesus Christ was crucified in Constantinople in 1086. And that ancient Egypt, Rome, and Greece were all fashioned by the Renaissance writers and artists, saying that the time of the pharaohs, so the time of the Egyptian pharaohs, Fomenko says, was lasted into the 1700s. Shit. So, it may sound crazy to people. It, sounded crazy to me at first. He's got a 7 or 6 book series. This is all done by extensive research where he's going in and looking at sources and basically says that things have repeated themselves. And we've also seen that. Mm-hmm. We've seen with Helena, right?
Oh, the Saint Helena?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That
There's
name,
2, but when you go and look her up,
they're the same.
They're the same, and one was 200 BC and one was 400 AD or something.
One was Constantinople. One was Constantine's mother, and one was King Isaiah's mother.
Yes.
Right. And both of them have the same story.
Same story of feeding the famine, or feeding the people during the famine.
Going to Jerusalem, feeding them.
Sharing her
son becoming a convert.
Yeah.
The whole thing is the same story, just repeated.
Depending on who you're talking about or which story it is, then that's who.
Yeah, then you can
comes
find
back to the same story.
Yeah, you can kind of find. Well, there'll be different sites about each person, but really it's the same story, just kind of separated.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone, to Jordanism Monday Night Raw. Hopefully we are on the air. We couldn't get a hold of Jordan for a second, but now we got him. One of the best researchers of our time, someone who has been an inspiration to me and many others to begin researching the things that we were taught and to actually look into the world that it's the way it actually is, not just the way that we are told it is. And that's Jordan Maxwell. So, Jordan, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Fine, I think. I appreciate being here with you. Thank you for it.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. I also wanted to tell people just real quick about your site, which is jordanmaxwellshow.com. And last time you were on, you mentioned the research society that you have created, and we became members. And I want to just tell everybody that it's one of the best ways you can ever spend $30. It's a one-time charge, and then what you get is all of Jordan's research, and there's new stuff being added all the time. Ton of PDF books that I've found there that are, there's a wealth of information there, Jordan. So maybe you could tell people a little bit about how that site's been going.
Yes, well, like you said, my website, because there are other websites out there with my name on them that don't belong to me. So I want to make sure people understand, if you want to contact me, Jordan Maxwell, as my host said, my website is jordanmaxwellshow.com. And on that website, jordanmaxwellshow.com, is my podcast, which I haven't been able to do a whole lot with here lately. But nonetheless, it's a podcast. And on there, you will see a banner talking about a research society website that I have added to my website. So it's called the Jordan Maxwell Research Society website, and you can join it for $30 donation to my work. And basically what that Research Society website is all of my, over the years, all of my documents and pictures and research into all the dark corners of the human family and the underbelly of human civilization, all the dark stuff about law and government and religion and government and God knows what else, all kinds of interesting and dark stuff that I've been collecting over the years. I decided to put it onto a research website because I was told, I'll try and make this quick, I was told that by my lawyer friends that there's two of you. There are two of you. There's a private you and a public you. And if you say, if you go out to dinner, say, with about 10 of your friends, and you're sitting in the back of a restaurant talking with your friends, whatever you say in that setting with your friends there in a private dinner, as long as your friends don't mind, you can use any language you want and say anything you wish to say, no matter how gruesome it might be. You can say whatever you want about anybody you want, as long as the people around the table don't mind. It's a private conversation. Government has nothing to say about what you talk about in private with your friends. So there's a private you that is protected, that nobody, not only government, but nobody else has a right to comment on anything you said around that table. But if you go on the radio or television or go out into the public and start talking the same way that you were talking at the table, now that's different. Now you can get in trouble because government is empowered to protect the people. That's basically what our government's supposed to do, is to protect the rights and to protect the people. So therefore, if you go out and start using language and talking about people and using disgusting language, you're going to be, the government's going to step in and do something about it. And so if you want to talk about things which are not generally discussed in public, if you want to show pictures and documents and talk about things that most people don't want to know and don't even know exist, you might want to, because of the technology today on the web, you should have a private website where people have to join. That's the way the law looks at it, so that anything you put on that website only goes to people who want to know, who wanted to be a part of it, to hear it. And so that's why I'm just protecting myself by putting all of my research now onto a private website that you can join. Like you said, it's only a one-time donation to my work, and it's on Jordan Maxwell Show, and you will see a banner that says Research Society. Click on it and join. And I've got a lot of stuff on there already, but I've got over a terabyte. That's 1,000 gigs of pictures and documents and audios and videos and links and people, and especially research articles on all kinds of dark stuff that people are not usually aware of. So if you want to follow my research work and do it in a private way, well, then just join my Research Society website. And again, my website is jordanmaxwellshow.com. And thank you for letting me talk about that for a few moments.
Yeah, no problem. It's, like I said, a great wealth of information. And just wanted to let you know, too, that I'm going to give you the information for Naysay is his name. He's the Indian from Minnesota. I think you've dealt with him before, but he says he's got some gift certificates to your favorite steakhouse to give you. So I'll pass you his information after the show. Just wanted to let you know.
Good. Yeah.
Also, I have a question for you, and this is regarding something that, now I've only been doing this kind of work for, 2 or 3 years, and I know you've done it for much longer, so I'm sure you see it more than I do, but I see it all the time. These people that think because you've looked into the occult, because you've looked into masonry, you've looked into everything, that people put this label on you of, oh, Jordan Maxwell, Luciferian priest. Oh, Jordan Maxwell, 33rd degree Mason. How do you handle those people? And I think it's important because I try and tell people that even if that were the case, there's nothing wrong with listening to the information that Jordan gives, that you should be capable of deciphering for yourself what is true, what isn't, what works with reality. So how do you handle that situation, or how would you talk to people that seem to put that label on anybody who researches Aleister Crowley, that all of a sudden you are part of the OTO? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. And I get that so much. I get all kinds of emails, condemning me, saying they hope the hell I die soon and leave this world because I'm working for the devil and all kinds of nonsense like that. It's because the church has made people so gun shy with the word occult. The very word occult is a word which simply means hidden. So if you put your hand in your pocket, by dictionary definition, your hand is now an occult hand, meaning that it's hidden. So, my God, I mean, that's so much has been hidden from us. I mean, starting with our parents when we were 5 years old. There's all kinds of things that we're not supposed to know, or somebody else's business, or not purposely hidden, but it's just none of your business. And so, but then again, the dark side of this world, the criminal side, wants to stay hidden. And one of the darkest spots in the human system today, and the darkest institution today, is religion. And the religious leaders know that. They know that their time is up pretty soon, and the world is beginning to wake up to the fact that the religions are just man-made institutions that have been financed, organized, and directed by the same people who give you your government, your banks, your insurance companies, your laws, and your hospitals and everything else that you live by. Well, the same people who own and run the earth also gave you your religions and your concept by which you live. And so the churches, first of all, the churches know, and I've watched this myself. People do not like to be found to be a fool. People do not like to find out that they have been tricked and deceived, and children don't like that either. In a school, if you're a young person in school and you didn't do your homework and you didn't study what you were supposed to, and now the teacher calls you up in the front of the class and has a problem on the blackboard and asks you to explain it because you should be able to, and you don't know anything about it and you can't explain it, the children are going to laugh at you because making you look like you're a fool. And children don't like to be mocked and laughed at, and adults don't like to, receive the same kind of treatment when it becomes obvious that they have been deceived and bought into something. And so you will never defend something that you didn't say, like you will when you did say it. So if you've been out telling people that you're a Christian or you're a Jew and you are this and that and this is what you believe and here's why, and then one day you find out you've been tricked and the whole thing you thought was true was not, now you're going to have to face the same people coming back down that you stepped on going up thinking that you were right. And so people don't want to admit that they're wrong in public, and they don't like to be found out in public for their indiscretions and also their ignorance of a problem or ignorance of a religion or whatever. Yeah. So that being said, there is this idea that if somebody is exposing you and your religion or your belief system, if you cannot handle what they're saying and intellectually come back and show them to be wrong, intellectually show them to be wrong and prove it, well, if you can't do that, and if there's a gut feeling you have that they might be right, and that's going to make you look like a fool, then the only thing left to do is what we call an ad hominem attack on the person. You attack their name, you attack their person, you attack their life and their work. You don't deal with what they're saying about your religion or your institution. You attack them, and so that's a childish thing to do. Mm-hmm. If you don't agree, if somebody is saying something that's not true about you, then present your side and let the world judge. Let your 12 people on a jury decide of your peers. Let them look at both sides and see which one they think are right. So if that's the problem I've had is so many times people will hear me and they immediately, because I'm talking about their religion, I'm talking about their government, I'm talking about their city and their country, their laws and their ridiculous religious beliefs. They see me as as a warrior and a demonic, depraved, devil worshiping. I'm not a devil worshiper. I'm just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. I always say, and it's a good time to say it again, I always say that I'm not the world's foremost expert on anything. I'm far too well read and knowledgeable to know how much I don't know. So I just say that I'm just an ordinary guy doing the best I can to look at a subject and think about it and use human logic and reason and read and study the reference books, the encyclopedias, the reference books of all over the world. And I've been doing it for now since 1959, which is about 56 years. I've been looking at religion, theology, studying the basis for government, words, terms, the etymology of words, the conceptual ideas of belief systems. I've just always questioned everything. And it's part of being a truth seeker, someone who wants to know the truth.
Absolutely.
But I keep coming back to one point on everything I question. And now I finally have it. And unfortunately, I paid a terrible price to learn what I know and to paid a horrible price in my life to do what I've done. And that is to question life itself. I question the government. I question law. I question business, commerce, banking, clergy, everything. I question it all. But I do so with respect and decency and honor. I'm not a radical. I'm not a revolutionary. I'm not a big patriot. I didn't start the truth movement. I'm just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. I've always been interested in where things come from and who started whatever it is I'm involved in. Where did it come from? Why am I doing it? And who started it? Well, I mean, this is the kind of people that the CIA would like to hire, and the FBI, because I just have a natural desire to know the dark side. I want to see the underbelly, pick up the big rock and see what's underneath of it, and see what the basis. So the basis for everything.
Leaving no stone unturned, because that really, just helps you feel better about your life and just making sure that you've looked into everything. And Jordan, do you see, as I do, that one of the issues with today's world is that a few people have seen the issues with religions, and so they run to the one organization that is against religion, and that is science, the great organization of men who only deal in facts and evidence. I mean, can we talk a little bit about where the error lies in that belief?
Yes, I do have a definitive feeling about that subject. First of all, I believe that religion should be a science, because religion is what people of the world are basing their life on. They're putting their life and their destiny, their human life now, and the possibility of maybe a life after death. I don't know. I wasn't there. I haven't been there yet, so I don't know. But if there's an idea that there's an afterlife, that you will pay for whatever you've done, or even worse, have to come back and do it again. But it's all based on what you believe. But my point is that religion should be a science. It should be something that you are continually digging to prove and to find out, where do you go when you die? How did you get here? Who in the world created you? What are we talking about when we say animate life? And how did we get here? What are we doing here? Where are we in the universe? All of these questions that the great minds of the world have always entertained. It should be religion is a science to understanding life.
Absolutely. Hold that thought quick, Jordan. We'll be right back from this break, and we'll explore that a little bit more. You're listening to Jormxx Monday Night Raw with Jordan Maxwell. See you in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back. You're tuned into Jormxx Monday Night Raw. We're talking to Jordan Maxwell. And before the break, we were getting into the lies and the liars that control the lives of the many. And Jordan, is science a religion, or is it the organization of men who really want to be proven wrong and are open to truth and changing their beliefs and ideas? Or are they as dogmatic as the religions that can be found, in every corner of the earth?
Well, I want to answer that, and I've got that right in front of me, and I'm going to answer that. But let me give you something that I've said on other shows, and some in the audience may have heard me say it. But then again, there may be some in the audience who haven't heard. So I think it bears repeating at this point. Then I want to get back to this question of yours. But if you have a two-story building, you own a two-story building, and you've decided to put some extremely heavy weight on the second floor, like automobiles or printing presses or stuff like that. Before you do that, what you should do is get a building inspector out on the property and go downstairs with a ladder and remove the ceiling tiles downstairs and look at the foundation of that floor to see if it's going to hold that kind of weight before you go building on it. So what you're doing is you're standing under the foundation that you're going to build on. So when you're standing under the foundation you're going to build on, that's where we get our idea of understanding, because you're standing under the foundation. You don't stand on the foundation, you stand under it to see what is the dark side, see what the rest of the story is. I mean, how many people have bought beautiful homes for an incredibly cheap price, only to discover that the reason why it's so cheap, it was based sitting right on an earthquake fault. And so, there's a whole science to intelligence. You need to do research. You need to go to a library and read and study and question the integrity of everything. And the other thing I've said, too, is that if you are going to ship a large package across the country or around the world, you go into the garage and you get some rope. You find some rope over in the corner and you tie up the box, and that should be sufficient for shipping it. But if you're going to take that same rope and go out to the edge of a 10-story high-rise and tie it off and hang on the rope yourself, now you're hanging your life on that rope. So you better check the integrity of that rope before you go hanging your life on it. Well, the same is true before you hang your life on your religion or your political association or your friendship or your church or whatever it is you are hanging on to make you feel like you're a part of society. You have your own little church or your own personal group or your social group or whatever it is. Well, before you go hanging your life on it, you better check the integrity of that institution or that church or that belief system. So the idea is to get behind the scenes and see where things really come from. So, as I said before, religion should be a science. It should be something that people study. Where did we come from? How is life recreated in the universe? Who created us? Where did we come from? Scientists like to put down everybody and say, "Oh, it's a bunch of bull, and we all evolved from cockroaches or something, and so it's not important." Well, in actual fact, they have no idea in the world what's really going on, and so I'm just amazed at how religion should be a science, but today science is a religion. Today science is nothing more than a big church. It's just like the Catholic Church. We call it the science industry. They have their holy writers, they have their saints, the holy men, and whatever the holy men say, and keeping in mind that they're just men like you and I. They put their pants on the same way. They have the same problems with their family, a wife and kids like you do, but they are holy men now. And so now they can speak with authority, just like the Pope. He can, the scientists now speak with with impunity. They can say whatever they think, and that's it. And so we poor folks are supposed to lean over and kiss their ring and thank them for all of the wisdom and the knowledge. And then one day you find out 6 weeks later they were wrong. How many times has science given us the definitive answer to something and taught it in the universities and the colleges, and then 20 years later we find out it's all a bunch of BS and it has no basis in scientific fact at all. Why? Well, because we have bigger microscopes now. We have bigger telescopes now. We have, we've gained a lot of knowledge through our technology. Now we see that what we were taught 50 years ago about atoms and about life and about evolution, etc., we now know better because we have a better insight. We now understand a lot that we didn't know 100 years ago. Well, I'm here to tell you that 99% of what we understand and know for sure in science today will not be the same 50 years from today. We're going to find out 50 years from today, probably 20, that most of what we today know is just not true scientifically. I've heard all the stories. I've heard the pros and cons in science. I've talked to astronauts, industrialists, politicians, scientists, physicists, astrophysicists. I've heard all kinds of explanations, pro and con, and I know after hearing all of this over the years, for like I said, almost 60 years, I've been talking to people and communicating my ideas and hearing all the ideas floating around the universe. I've heard so much of it. I know that most of what we think we understand today, 25 years from today, will be all laughed at. People will be joking and laughing about what we today in science believe in our teaching. The same thing, they had science programs, 50 years ago, that none of it is true today. So I've realized a long time ago, adults are just grown-up children. And they have their holy place, they have their holy orders and their special schools that they've gone to, which means that they know everything there is to know about everything except what the truth is about anything. And so I have become very disenchanted with science. I see science today. There are some, I would say there's about a dozen scientists that I can name that are really legitimately and de jure and legitimately scientists, people with extraordinarily brilliant people who are doing some work on the cutting edge of mankind, doing some incredible work that, generally speaking, science today doesn't even know exist. And if you bring it up to a scientist, what some of these geniuses are doing, they'll look at you and laugh. Well, they're not going to laugh 20 years from now when we find out that these geniuses, were right and they were wrong. But you see, the reason why the science industry, like the religious industry, likes to mock and put down other people's thoughts is because we're talking business. It has to do with their income. It has to do with their livelihood and their profession. And, they don't want to look like a fool in front of other people. So if some other person who's far, far more well-read and far more intelligent than they are comes up with a opposing opinion, they don't want to hear it. Why? Simple, because they've been telling everybody on the earth that they are the world's foremost authority and that they know everything. And now there's some guy coming out of left field who is showing that they are full of crap. all of it is a lie and a deception. And now they're, to me, may look like a fool, because now we're beginning to see that what they believed, everyone's laughing at them now because they bought into something that somebody put into their head. So when you begin to see that the educational institutions are owned, financed, and run by the same secret societies that own our government, our banks, our military industrial complex, the secret societies, very powerful people behind the world governments and behind the whole institutions that we live by. Those institutions were designed, financed, organized, and directed by somebody. And you know as well as I do that if you're going to run an educational institution like Harvard, you're going to have a lot of money to put it together and watch it grow and make sure it grows to do what you want it to do. So I'm just saying that science is a religion today, and it's very sad because there's only about a dozen really, truly impressive scientists out there. The rest are a bunch of religious fanatics. So I have no respect, generally speaking, across the board. I'll say it with a wide brush. I, generally speaking, have very little to no respect for science whatsoever. It's just a cheap religion. While there are some scientists who are on the cutting edge of wisdom and human knowledge, but they're mocked and laughed at and completely dismissed as fools. Just as Nikola Tesla many years ago proven, now we now know it, that he proved that he could feed energy, electricity to the whole earth for free. It comes out of the earth. The electricity comes out of the earth. And he could set it up, fix a situation where the entire world of mankind could have all the electricity they could possibly use for free. Mm-hmm. And the people who were running the banks, the Rothschilds and the J.P. Morgans and the international bankers heard that Tesla was going to give the earth, not America, the whole world, darkest Africa, the whole world is going to have all the electricity they want for free. Well, the international bankers put a stop to that bullshit real quick. They shut him down real quick. They took his money, burned down his laboratory, burned down everything he was building, and threw him into bankruptcy. And that'll teach him to try and help the human race. That's not what the bankers are here to do. Bankers are here to make money. And they're not here to help the human race. They don't give a damn about the human race. And so that's the way the world works today. The whole world is a business, Mr. Beale. You know, it's pounds and rubles and shekels and money and and lies and deception. It's just an extraordinary story of what has happened to the human family. And today, because of all the business, we humans are now under arrest. The human race is now under arrest. It's as if you have been put, a cop has put the handcuffs on you and brought you to the jailhouse. That's what we are now as a human family. We're in a jailhouse. We have been put under arrest. We cannot speak out and tell the world what we know. If you want to tell the people of the world what's really going on, you can do that. In America, we have freedom of speech. As long as you don't talk about something that you're not supposed to talk about.
Right.
And I know all about that because I've been in radio. I'm talking for years. I've already been told by government people, you better watch your mouth. You better watch what you're saying because we're listening. Government is listening to you. And so I know that, the idea, I was told by a government guy many years ago. I'm not going to tell you which agency he was in, but it was very high. And he just made the comment to me. He said, the reason why we allow people to go on radio and television and supposedly have freedom of speech Normally, we don't like that idea of freedom of speech. But we do that for one reason and one reason only. We allow people to talk on the radio and talk in in seminars, etc., in public because we, the government, want to know how much do they not know. How much do they really know, and whatever it is they know, we want to hear if they really know something or if they don't. So I learned a long time ago when I was a kid, nothing in this world is what you think it is. Nothing. And your laws are not what you thought they were. Your government's not what you thought it was. Your religion is not teaching you what you thought it was. It's really an extraordinary eye-awakening experience to find out how much people don't know. And that's what I'm in the business of doing, trying to help people to realize that your religions, your government, your thinking, your understanding of the world is faulty, and that's why you're in trouble. You know,
Yep.
people are angry now. They're in the streets and they're rioting and they're angry. They're fighting each other because they don't know what else to do. So the Democrats are fighting the Republicans, the black are fighting the whites, and Indians are fighting the cowboys, and everybody's fighting each other. Why? Because the human family on the earth, all people, the whole human race, is very, very frustrated and angry at the injustice, the stupidity, the ludicrousness of the laws and the injustice in courts. And so the whole human race is tired of this lies and deception and the injustices of the system. So that's why we have a bumper crop of alcoholism, drug addiction, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, music, entertainments, baseball games, ball games, anything to keep the human mind occupied so you don't start thinking too much.
Right. Distractions so you don't go looking above you. Hey, a question
Yep.
from the chat room that I think is important. Is there enough time to wake up people to make a difference in the human race, in your opinion, at this point?
Well, you're asking, first of all, for a subjective opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is just my opinion. But when I give you my opinion on anything, it's like a judge rendering an opinion on a court case. I mean, he doesn't come off the top of his head on whatever he feels it must be. When a judge renders an opinion, we call it an opinion, but it actually means based on the court's records of 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the Constitution, and what the Supreme Courts have ruled down through the ages, down through the years, and how that law is now viewed, how that crime is now viewed based on all that has come before. If you study it, like that, then you say, well, here's what I think. Well, it's not what you think. It's what you think based on the history of the problem. And so, when I'm asked things like, is there enough time to awake the earth? One thing I would say is I think the earth is already now in the process of awakening.
Yeah.
And people are now awakening quickly. But I would add to that that's what people normally do when they're in prison. The guys up at Pelican Island, Pelican Point in the prison, federal prisons, they all wake up in the morning. And so when the whole prison has awakened, now they're awake, but they're still in prison. So you might as well go back to bed because you're not going anywhere. You might as well go back to bed. You don't need to be awake because you're not going to go anywhere anyway. You're not doing anything anyway. So I'm saying that to be awake implies that you are able to do something about it and change the circumstances for the people and for the government and for the country. Well, the people of America, like the rest of the world, but especially I'm concerned about my own country, the people of America have no power whatsoever to do anything. We can elect and elect, but we can't select. We can only elect. And so the people of America have no power to do anything. We can cry about it and rant and rave about it, but you can't do anything. And the reason why is simple, because knowledge is power. And the people have no knowledge. They do not know how a bank works. They don't know where their government comes from. They don't know what the words mean and the etymology of the science words and terms and symbols. They don't know any of this dark communication between secret societies and powerful people around the world that happens late at night when you're asleep. People do not realize how the world really works. And unless and until you do, you're not going to be able to change anything. We can talk about some of that dark knowledge on the flip side of this hour, because I want to give you some examples of how much you really don't know about the world you live in. Therefore, don't be concerned about changing it, because you're not changing nothing until you find out how it works. So you can't change anything if you don't even know anything about it to start with.
Awesome. We'll be right back, guys, with Jordan Maxwell as he... Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. We're here with Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan, I know you have the same beliefs that we do about the Bible, that, whatever truth may be in it, it is a work of men, and a device used for control. But when you look at and see what people call the occult and Satanism and the idea of demons, I know when we, read the books of Tommaso Campanella, he was jailed for 27 years and said that he realized God was real when he met the demons. Where do you stand on the idea of Satan and demons? Are they real, or is this something that these higher level elite just use as an antithesis to the idea of God? Where do you stand on that idea?
Well, like I said, that is a big question, and there's a lot to that, and I do have, and I have formulated only because I've been looking at theology for 56 years and back and forth, day in and day out, researching the words and terms and all the experiences of being held all over the world. And so I do have definite feelings about that. So let me try and explain. First of all, the word God is dog spelled backwards. So I don't use God too often because it's just a word. And I learned many years ago, back in 59 and 60, from a teacher that kept telling the class, define your terms, which I think has always been important. When you're talking, especially publicly, when you're talking to people, you should define your terms. Meaning, if you're going to talk about God, first of all, we need to find out, what do you, in your mind, picture when you're using the word God? What do you see God as? How do you view it? How do you view that subject? And the word devil. Devil is simply putting a letter D. The letter D is in David. The letter D in front of the word evil. And it becomes devil. So devil is simply a D in front of the word evil, and God is taking an O out of good. So God is good and the devil's evil. But that's the simplistic, but nonetheless, that's a place to start. It shows you that what we're talking about is the need to understand the etymology of words and the concepts. When we're talking about hell, where people will die and they go to hell, where does that word hell come from? Well, it comes from a Hebrew or a Jewish term, Sheol. Sheol, S-H-E-O-L or S-H-E-O-U-L, Sheol. Sheol in Hebrew is in our language today, hell. And so when you ask some rabbis, what is the word for hell in your language, they will say Sheol. And well, what is Sheol? Well, it's basically mankind's common grave. It's just basically your grave. And so that's what hell is. Now, the church has come up with all kinds of misunderstandings and talked about the hellfire because that's in Revelation, and it has nothing to do with anything that is spiritual at all, because the book of Revelation was never put into the original canon of the Bible. Originally, and going back to the original documents that we call today the Bible, the book of Revelation was not in there. It was never considered to be Christian. And it was taken out. It was put in later, and then it was taken out later. Then it was put back in later, and then it was taken out later. So for the last 2,000 years, the book of Revelation has been in the Bible, been out of the Bible, and put back in, taken back out. And the reason why it keeps getting taken out is because the people taking it out are saying that it has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. And then I would say, I think you're right. I think the book of Revelation is not a Christian document at all. It has no basis in Christianity at all. But on the other hand, even though I know what it is, I know where it came from. It's an astrology reading, and astrological concepts and ideas that can be traced back into the ancient world. And so we're talking about the New Testament itself is an astrological belief system. I mean, you ask any child, ask any 8-year-old Christian child, where is God? And he will point up there. What do you mean up there? Well, he's out there, pointing to the heavens. Well, okay, so God's in heaven. Unless, of course, you're in China and he points the other way. So he's out in heaven somewhere. Well, do you believe in angels and demons? Yes. Well, where are they? And they'll point out there. They're in heaven. And they've come from out there. So when you're talking about demons and devils, I am totally convinced for myself that the ideas that are expressed by the church are not accurate. First of all, when you hear the word Lucifer today is pretty much popularly understood to be another name for the devil. But in actual point of fact, if you go to the reference works, go to the big seminary libraries, and go to the big libraries in your university and look up the word Lucifer, you will find that Lucifer is not the devil. It never has been associated with the devil. And even more important than that, we find in the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I am Lucifer. So now we find out that in the Bible itself has Jesus saying, I am Lucifer. So now we find out that there's a dark side of this world, a dark and evil presence, and my God, we don't need to have that proven. That's in your face all day long. There is some kind of a demonic depravity that is not of the human world. It has nothing to do with us. It's extremely evil and very dark, and of that there is no doubt. Now, is it Satan? Well, Satan is simply a word coming out of the old Middle East. It's actually Satan, S-A and then hyphen T-A-N, a Satan. A Satan is an opposer in a courtroom. If you go to court, the person you're taking to court is your enemy. And so your enemy in a court is called a Satan, or one who opposes you in court. And so therefore, anyone who opposes your good nature as a human wanting to do good, but something is opposing that, then that would be a Satan or a Satan. So the very word, the etymology of the word Satan is not understood to be a person. It's understood to be a force against you, some kind of a spiritual, unseen presence. I call it a spiritual presence on the earth that is opposing the human family. It's causing all kinds of horrors and tragedies and bloodshed, but it's highly organized. It's extremely well organized. So when I hear Christian teachings that say that Satan and his organization are the demons, all his demons under him, there is a modicum of truth in that there is some kind of an organized conspiratorial apparatus that is obviously behind the world of mankind, that is continually keeping people raping and killing and drinking and all of the destruction that's going on in the human family all over the world. And now, of course, because we have the better technology, we're now beginning to see it's everywhere. Into the wild mountains of Africa, there's all kinds of bloodshed and violence and rape and pillage and all sorts of stuff going on. So I am totally convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there is some kind of a highly intelligent, well placed power behind the world scene that is spiritual, meaning you don't see it, but they are here. Well, we don't see aliens that many times around the world, but we know they're here. Factually, there are other life forms on this earth. We don't know if they are from somewhere else or if they are indigenous to this planet. I think what is happening is that there is, in point of fact, a presence on the earth of extraterrestrial, what the U.S. government calls EBEs, EBEs, which is extraterrestrial biological entities, meaning life forms that have come here from other worlds, from other places in the universe, who have come here. And maybe where they have come from, they can cloak themselves in camouflage of some sort where we cannot see them. Well, we know we can do that today. We have in the U.S. military, there are suits that people can put on that you cannot see them. They become totally invisible. We know that. I mean, I've seen the product, so I know that we can do that, and it's very simple the way it's done. But my point being is that whoever these entities are who have come here from somewhere out there, just as there are different people in your city, some are very, very good, some are regular people, some are very shady, some are murderers, some are vicious animals. So there's going to be all kinds of humans, all kinds of people. Well, I think that this is exactly what's happening in the universe, is that there are all kinds of life forms out there in the universe that we maybe know about, at the top of our government knows about, but we don't know. We're not supposed to know. All we Americans are supposed to do is drink your beer and watch basketball and worry yourself sick over Paris Hilton. But but to understand the universe that we've come from and who may have come here many, many millions of years ago, or maybe they're indigenous and we're the ones that just got here. But there are, in point of fact, there is, in fact, a presence on the earth of what we would call non-human entities. I am totally convinced that there is something to that. Yes, I totally believe that there is some kind of an organization of brilliant, intelligent life forms that mean to destroy us. And so I think that they have probably come from somewhere else, or that maybe they have been here all along, and right, we're the new guys on the block, the new people coming in. You go back to the idea of mining, when digging holes in the ground way down. Well, in Africa, they've had mines that go down miles into the earth, and they find miles down in strata that we know is, at least all paleontologists will agree, at the depth that some of these mines go, the strata itself is at least 3.5 billion with a B. 3.5 billion years old, that far down in the earth. And so when the miners in Africa went down there and dug down that deep, they're finding handmade metal artifacts, strange handmade molten metal artifacts, which tells us, I mean, you don't have to be an astronaut to figure this one out. Somebody was around on this earth 3.5 billion years ago that understood metals and how to melt the metals and form them into handmade artifacts. So somebody was on this earth 3.5 billion years ago, and that is a fact. That's not suggesting that it's ancient. No, it is a fact because they're finding handmade artifacts in strata miles and miles down in the earth, which we know to be at least 3.5 to 4 billion years old. So
Jordan,
there is a big question there as to what's really going on this earth.
Let me tell you just a little bit about our research and what we think, and then you tell me what you think the chances are that this can be the case. But I'm not a believer that the idea of the universe as we were taught is true, because there's not sufficient evidence to me to believe that Jupiter is a planet that I can go to, that Mars is a planet that you can go and land on. I'm not even a believer that the moon is something that you can go and land on. There's not sufficient evidence that I've seen that would prove that. And
I understand what you're saying. I understand.
And so one of the things that you just said that I think is iffy to me is once you know that science is a religion and that it's a story told by men that they all agree, when you say things like, okay, they dug so many miles into the earth and that they found things in this strata and that is 3.5 billion years, aren't we just giving in to science? I understand that that's their story, but there's no way that anybody can say that there's evidence that tells us that that's 3.5 billion years unless you agree to adopt the foundation that science is built upon, which if it's wrong, then all of the studies after that are wrong. So I guess my question, when you say it's a fact that people were on this earth 3.5 billion years ago, I mean, do you think that there's a chance that that's not true and that these other entities, which is something I believe in as well, but they are just, they live here as well. They live here on earth, that I don't think you can travel. I don't think the nearest star is 25 trillion miles away. I'm just wondering what your thought is on that.
Well, here's my point. I understand what you're saying, and and I agree. You have a good point. All I would say is that the mere fact that if you can go down, miles down into the earth and find handmade artifacts, how do you explain that? Well, you explain it that somebody here knew how to mold metal and make artifacts. And today there's a whole science to that. There's a whole genre that's been developed over the years called out of place. Look it up on the web and go to first of all, go to the web and go to image. So you only get pictures on image. And then type in the word out, O-U-T, of, O-F, place, P-L-A-C-E, out of place artifacts. And look at all of the strange stuff that has been found in the oceans, inside mountains, and jungles. I mean, all over the earth, strange stuff has been found that implies that somebody has been here a long time ago and doing things with this earth that millions of years ago, if not billion. And so my point is that I don't care what I understand your point of view. What I'm saying is that somebody has been on this earth a long time ago, whether it's 3.5 billion or if it's only 100 million. My logic alone would tell me that if something is 2.5 to 3 miles down under the earth, that represents, I'm not a scientist, but that represents a long time ago. Because obviously it was on the Earth at one time. Now it's 3.5 miles down under the Earth. So a lot of changes have taken place on the Earth. Great catastrophes. And the tectonic plates that we're told about. So there's always been some kind of a dark history.
Welcome back. You're listening to Jeranism Monday Night Raw. We're here with Jordan Maxwell, and we're going to get into some of these questions that should lead you, Jordan, to understand a little bit better where we're coming from. My first question is, do you believe that men have been to the moon?
My gut feeling is no. But if they haven't gone there the way we think that we go to the moon.
Right.
If there is some sort of a higher intelligence in this world that is far better at science than we humans are, and have given us something, some secret on how to get there and how to come back, if that's what the case is, then maybe some men have gone to the moon.
Right, but from 1969 to 1972, the way that they show you films, those are not real.
Yeah. In other words, they went to the moon with the computers back in the early 70s.
Yeah, I think that too.
And they went right through the Van Allen belt, and which would French fry anything except we humans, who went through it and went right to the moon. Then we came back. But in point of fact, I don't think humans have been on the moon. And if it very well might be that there is some life on the moon, and but if it is, it's not us. It's not humans. And if there has been humans, then that's a whole story in itself. How did they get there? Because even NASA, in one of their documentaries I was watching, the scientists said, we've been working on this problem of the Van Allen belt. You just can't go through the Van Allen belt. It's just not possible. And so we're working on that. Well, if you're working on that, you still don't have a resolution to the problem.
How'd you go 50?
Well, then how did you go to the moon?
So this is what it's kind of opened up for us, is that when you really look into the fact that NASA kind of holds that key to space, that there's other countries that go, Russia, but they all work through NASA. They all work together with NASA. Once you realize that it's kind of gatekeeping in a way, that's why we question all of the ideas of space travel. If they lied about the moon and told us that it's because of the space race, but I'm sure in your research you've seen that the countries work together. That during the whole during the whole idea of the Cold War, right, that this was just a propaganda to scare the American public. And so when you really look at the fact of them going to the moon and showing us the Earth from the outside of it, that's why we challenge even the fact of the Earth being a sphere, because there's some things that would be a case. Like, for instance, we've got this orbiting craft, the ISS, that's supposedly in orbit of the Earth, has been for 16 years. Jordan, there's no 24/7 video footage of the Earth from space, which it's 2017. Do you see that as an absolute red herring, an absolute problem, that NASA, who gets $52 million a day, $52 million a day, what has the space industry done for humanity?
We could cure hunger.
Really.
in a day.
Yeah, it would not cost. I think I figured it out once. It would cost like $750,000 to feed the 30,000 children that die a day due to hunger, malaria, diarrhea, and then NASA would get 51.25 million instead of 52 million.
Terrible.
So, do you see issues with the idea of NASA, because it is a cult? Everything they do with the Apollo missions, now with OSIRIS-REx, that this is clearly an organization that started with Nazi scientists, that even had, Jack Parsons and had its involvement with L. Ron Hubbard. Do you see that as a possible huge deception that is, kind of blanketing humanity?
Well, I think that you glossed over it too quick when you said you made the point, but you didn't emphasize it well enough. I don't think that NASA was developed primarily by Nazi scientists who, after the Second World War was over, the United States made a deal with the Vatican and the Vatican made a deal with the top Nazis in Germany to get them out. And so the Vatican gave the scientists, all of the best minds in German science, and my God, they were incredible. But the Vatican gave to the German scientists and philosophers and mathematicians and the military people in Nazi Germany, gave them money and false passports, and got them protection to get out of Europe completely. With the United States' help, it was the United States, and the Vatican, and the leaders of the Vatican and United States operation were all belonged to a Catholic order called the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta was a secret society within the Vatican, within the Catholic Church, very, very wealthy, powerful people in Europe that most of us don't even know exist. But they belong to a secret society in the Catholic Church called the Knights of Malta. And so many of the German and Nazi officials were Knights of Malta members. So many of the officials in the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services in America during the Second World War, were all members of the Knights of Malta, a Catholic Vatican operation. And after the Second World War was over in 1944-45, the Vatican Knights of Malta, Catholic Vatican Knights of Malta operation started collecting up all of the scientists, philosophers, all the great minds and brains of the Nazi Empire, and giving them false passports and money and arranging safe travel for them to come to America, to go to work for America, or in Mexico, sending a lot of them to Central America and South America, to Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay. The whole Nazi movement was financed, organized, directed out of Washington, D.C., and London and the Vatican. And my God, what a story. I mean, there's so much out there on this one subject. It could take a year and just read all of it.
Yeah.
So NASA is actually a Nazi operation. The whole thing is Nazi. And so if you don't understand that, you don't understand the Knights of Malta, then you're never going to understand, what's going on around the world right now today in the Middle East. And the wars that are going on right now as we speak in the Middle East has to do with the very highly financed, highly intelligent, and well-financed organization of the Nazi Party today. So in the Middle East today, with Syria and all the other things in the headlines, we're talking about the re-emergence on the earth of the whole world, Nazi world movement. And the Vatican is behind this. And so there's going to be an extraordinary exposure one day. It will come out who is really behind the wars and all the stuff that's going on in our country and around the world, and you're going to find out it was not who you thought it was. It was the Vatican, a Nazi world movement that not only did not die, but came out of the war just as healthy as it went into it. And they have the money, the connections, the brains, the scientists, the political connections, and today they run NASA and they run the country, and it's just an extraordinary story of betrayal that most people have never heard of before. But that's what I think NASA is all about. I think that NASA is doing something that the Nazis want, knowledge that they want. When you look at what the Nazis were doing in the Second World War and what they believed in their belief system, they were trying to contact, and they were said, there's so many documentaries and books have been written about the fact that the brains behind the Nazi Party, who were the actual international banking elite, they wanted to have some kind of a connection with the other world, off-world entities, other, for lack of a better term, alien presence in the universe. And these very bright and profoundly brilliant scientists and astronomers, etc., in Germany and in the Nazi Party were heavily involved in trying to make that happen for the Führer and for the German people, to connect themselves, their country and their people, to an extraterrestrial biological entities, looking to the heavens for real power. And so that's what's going on today. And all you need to do is understand how the Nazi Party is operating today out of Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil,
Argentina.
especially Argentina. It's a big story. And then throw into that mix the NASA being nothing but a pure Nazi operation. So, there's a big story here. Big story.
Propaganda piece as well, and that's obviously from the Germans and the idea of mind control. They came over, and if anybody's going to mind control you, it's going to be the guys who know how to do it. And
that's right.
You already answered this, but as much as we hear about the Jews and their control over everything, the banks, entertainment, are you also a believer though that all roads lead to Rome?
Well, I know that there is no doubt in my mind a connection between a segment of people that we call Jewish. Mm-hmm. But I know that there's a very big problem in using that term Jewish. Right. It is very, very, it's filled with landmines. So when you're walking through theology and talking about Jewish, I would say a good 95% of everything that we have been told about the ancient Jewish peoples and the ancient Israel and all of that never existed. There was no ancient Jewish people. There was no ancient Israel. There was no King Solomon, King David.
Right.
None of that ever existed. It's all a very big story, but none of it is history. So we now know that there was no ancient Israel. There was no ancient Jewish people. And so it now begins to look like there's something else going on here. And the Nazis were on the cutting edge of it. Absolutely. And so what we call Zionism today is something else, and it's not Jewish. This is a very, very big subject, and it's not to be covered in just a few minutes. It's a very big subject about the Messiah, about world government, about God's kingdom, the astrological implications coming out of Babylon and the Egyptians. So it's a very big subject, and we could get into it. But now you're talking about theology and religion. Boy, what a story that is.
We could talk to Jordan every week, I think, because we're in the same
just
same
have a
boat.
separate show where Jordan comes on for
the Jordan and Jaron show. Because we have the same beliefs in David and Solomon. Once you look back and see that these are all stories, not actual historical fact, and that's the one thing that people have a hard time, getting through their heads, that it's a possibility that this book, which we know that humans write books, that somehow this book may not be divine.
They're the hardest ones to talk to.
It's a very difficult group of people to talk to.
Well, and the reason why, like I said, because people do not want to have to look at something that they have bought into and believed, right, and have fought for and stood up for and put money into and donated large sums of money and give grandmother's house and grandfather's business and signed it all over to the church for the good of the Lord Jesus, and then come to find out that there was no Lord Jesus, right? That there was no ancient Israel, that there was no King David or King Solomon. None of this was true. It's all just a story. And now people waking up and find out, well, wait a minute, you mean we gave grandmother's home to the church and we willed grandfather's fortune to the church, and we've given everything, every week we give money to the church and supporting it, and now you're telling me the whole thing was an organized crime? None of it was true, and we bought into that? Well, it shows their ignorance, their ill-informed, uneducated ignorance, that they bought into something like a child. And so people don't want to have to face that in public and say, I guess I was so ignorant and drinking my beer and watching a ball game that somebody really highly intelligent fooled me and successfully deceived me and the whole nation I live in. And the reason why the nation was deceived is because people have always liked being, loved by their fellow man. Nobody wants to be an outcast in society. Children want to be accepted by their peers in school, and young people want to be accepted and by their peers in college and universities, and the policeman wants to be accepted by his comrades. Firemen and the fire department, they want to be accepted as one of the on the team. And lawyers will protect lawyers, and doctors will protect doctors, and people are in different organizations will protect each other. Because it's just a human nature. So we want to be liked and approved of, and part of our, we're part of the world, and we are respected. And then when we find out that all of the wonderful people that we've been following and listening to all of our life, and all of these people we've given our time and our effort and money and all kinds of time and effort to our friends and to our religion, to our country, and to our political party. And now we find out the whole thing is a crock of bull. All of it. It was all dreamt up by organized crime. It was dreamt up and by highly intelligent people who have too much time on their hands because they're so wealthy. So they're just sitting and planning how they're going to rip off the human race. Well, whoever these people are, they're pretty damn smart, because they have pretty much ruined the whole human race on the earth. They got people in every country hating people in every other country.
For no reason.
People in every religion hating everybody else in other religions.
I tip my cap to them all the time, because I just think it's a masterwork what they've done. But what you're saying there is exactly what I believe, but